Action for Bavaria, Action for Our Common Home, a statement of support from Ecojesuit, the global Ignatian advocacy network on ecology of the Jesuits. Ecojesuit supports the peaceful action of civil disobedience of Father Jorge Alt S.J. as he accompanies activists in Germany in expressing their demands for climate justice, human rights, and rights of nature. We need to listen to their message, local and global. Ecojesuit is concerned with the climate-induced disasters happening in different parts of the world and the resulting human tragedies faced by local people losing land, livelihood, and lives, most evident in the South. Since the Paris Agreement, Ecojesuit has constantly advocated and affirmed the need to meet the challenge of 1.5 degrees Celsius. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres recently asked all fossil fuel companies to present credible, comprehensive, and detailed new transition plans. These plans must cover all activities up and down the value chain. That must include reducing emissions from production, processing, transmission, refining, distribution, and use. And they must establish clear, near-term targets that chart the business transaction to clean energy. September 1st is the World Day of Prayer for the care of creation and the start of the season of creation. Pope Francis, in his message for this day, reminds us to connect to the spirituality of and responsibility for the land and oceans with a transformed governance. We must, he says, transform the public policies that govern our societies and shape the lives of young people today and tomorrow. Economic policies that promote scandalous wealth for a privileged few and degrading the conditions of many others spell the end of peace and justice. It is clear that the richer nations have contracted an ecological debt that must be paid. Laudato Si 51. With this background, Ecojesuit supports the purpose of the peaceful protest of Father Alt, which is scheduled for the 1st of September in Bavaria, aiming to draw attention to the voice of Pope Francis as well as the poor and the young generation. It is an important example of a local action aiming to increase global awareness and dialogue, giving hope across the world. One protest focus on Bavaria is due to its dependence on imported raw materials and metals for its auto manufacturing industry that will increase as demands for electronic vehicles increase and compromise social and ecological standards in the process, adding to the growing carbon release and increasing climate disasters, even in Europe in recent years. This calls, for example, for a strengthened enforcement of the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, or the SCDDA, and not giving way to efforts by corporations to suspend obligations and remove undue pressure from the economy. In the SCDDA, corporations are held legally accountable to respect human rights as well as social and ecological standards in their global supply chain as they impact around the world, especially in the global south. This calls further for a stronger support of poorer countries in their efforts to adapt to and mitigate the effects of climate change. Action in our political world, in our policies, in our lifestyles, is locally embodied in the voices of the activists of Bavaria in Germany and in other parts of the world. We are now called anew to listen more deeply to the cry of the poor and the youth for the care of our common home. We thank you for listening. Signed, Felipe Martin, S.J., Ecojesuit Coordinator, Jesuit Conference of European Provincials, Gabriel Lamugnañawa, Ecojesuit Coordinator, Jesuit Conference of Asia Pacific, Christopher Kellerman, S.J., Ecojesuit Coordinator, Jesuit Conference of Canada and the United States, Ngoni Edward, S.J., Ecojesuit Coordinator, Jesuit Conference of Africa and Madagascar, John Kennedy Savarimuto, S.J., Ecojesuit Coordinator, Jesuit Conference of South Asia, Silvio Marquis, S.J., Ecojesuit Coordinator, Conference of Jesuits in Latin America and Caribbean, Pedro Walpole, Ecojesuit Coordinator globally, Xavier Jayaraj, S.J., Secretary, Social Justice and Ecology, Secretariat, General Curie of the Society of Jesus, Rome. Again, our thanks to you for listening.